Imagine if a wrong turn by a taxi in New York City today started a global war tomorrow. It sounds impossible, but that is almost exactly what happened in 1914. This is the story of how one single bullet, fired by chance, ignited a conflict that would claim over 20 million lives and reshape the modern world forever. It's June 28, 1914. The city of Sarajevo is bathed in summer sunlight. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, is visiting. He and his wife, Sophie, ride in an open-top car, waving to the crowds. But earlier that day, a group of nationalist assassins from a secret society called the Black Hand had already tried to kill him. They threw a bomb at his car, but it bounced off and exploded under the vehicle behind, injuring several people. The Archduke, shaken but determined, decided to continue his tour after visiting the wounded in the hospital. And here history takes a fateful, unscripted turn. The driver, unfamiliar with the revised route, makes a mistake. He takes a wrong turn onto a side street. As he tries to reverse the large, clumsy vehicle, the engine stalls. The car comes to a dead stop, and right there, standing outside a delicatessen, is Gavrilo Princip, one of the failed assassins from that morning. He had given up thinking the plot was a failure. Now, in a moment of pure dumb luck, his target is stationary, just 5 feet in front of him. He doesn't hesitate. He raises his pistol and fires twice. The first bullet hits Sophie. The second hits the Archduke in the neck. Within minutes, they are both dead. In the chaos that followed, no one could have imagined that these 2 shots would be the first of billions fired in a war that would engulf the planet. The assassination didn't immediately cause a war. Instead, it lit the fuse on a bomb that Europe had been building for decades. This was the July crisis. Think of it like a row of dominoes, just waiting for a push. When Serbia refused to fully comply, Austria-Hungary declared war. That's when the second domino fell. Russia, seeing itself as the protector of the Slavic people in Serbia, began to mobilize its massive army. This triggered the third domino. Germany, bound by a treaty to support Austria-Hungary, Germany declared war on Russia. Then came the fourth and fifth dominoes. France, allied with Russia, was now at war with Germany. And when Germany decided to invade neutral Belgium to get to France, Great Britain, sworn to protect Belgian neutrality, declared war on Germany. In just over a month, a regional dispute had spiraled into a continental catastrophe. The great powers of Europe, locked into their pacts and driven by national pride, stumbled into a conflict that none of them truly wanted, but none knew how to stop. The armies began to move. Millions of young men, cheering and patriotic, marched off to what they believed would be a short, glorious adventure over by Christmas. They had no idea they were marching into an industrial meat grinder. The generals of 1914 were fighting with 19th century minds. They imagined cavalry charges and swift, decisive battles, but they were met with the brutal reality of 20th century technology. The single deadliest innovation was the machine gun, a weapon that could fire hundreds of rounds a minute, mowing down lines of advancing soldiers like a scythe through wheat. The glorious charges turned into suicidal sprints across a hellish landscape of mud, craters, and barbed wire known as no man's land. To survive, the armies dug in, from the Swiss Alps to the North Sea. A vast, horrifying network of trenches snaked across Europe. This was the Western Front, and for nearly 4 years it barely moved. Life in the trenches was a nightmare of filth, disease, and constant, nerve-shattering fear. Soldiers shared their squalid burrows with rats, lice, and the decomposing bodies of their comrades. The whistle would blow, and they would be ordered over the top, climbing out of their trench to charge into a hailstorm of machine gun fire for the sake of gaining a few meaningless yards of mud. The stalemate bred ever more monstrous weapons. Artillery shells, larger and more powerful than anything seen before, rained down day and night, turning the landscape into a lunar surface. Then came poison gas, a silent, creeping killer that choked the lungs and burned the skin. Great Britain introduced the first tanks, lumbering steel beasts designed to cross no man's land, while above, pilots in flimsy biplanes engaged in deadly dogfights, pioneering the age of air combat. Every innovation was met with a counter-innovation, each one more deadly than the last. The war became a relentless, grinding process of attrition, not about strategy, but about which side could bleed the other to death first. Let's pause to comprehend the sheer cost of this madness. The First World War lasted for years, 3 months and 2 weeks. But the numbers behind that time are what truly stagger the mind. In total, over 20 million people were killed. That's military and civilians combined. Imagine a massive sports stadium filled to capacity, holding 100,000 people. Now imagine 200 of those stadiums, all filled with people. That is the number of lives extinguished. Another 21 million were wounded, many maimed for life, their bodies and minds shattered by the horrors they had witnessed. An entire generation of young men was wiped out. In towns across Britain, France, and Germany, there were villages where nearly every single man between the age of 18 and 30 never came home. They were the lost generation. To understand the scale of the slaughter, you only need to look at a single day. On July 1, 1916, the first day of the Battle of the Somme, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties. More than 20,000 of them were killed, 60,000 men. In one day, the war wasn't just a tragedy. It was a testament to the industrial-scale waste of human life. By 1917, all sides were exhausted, bled white by years of futile slaughter. But 2 events would finally tip the scales. First, revolution in Russia caused them to pull out of the war, freeing up German troops to focus on the West. But this advantage was erased by the second event, the entry of the United States. America's fresh troops and immense industrial power gave the Allies a decisive edge. A final German offensive in the spring of 1918 failed, and with its army and home front collapsing, Germany had no choice but to seek an end. The armistice was signed. The fighting would cease on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. Across the front, after 4 years of ceaseless, deafening noise, the guns fell silent. Seismographs that had been recording the constant vibrations of the artillery barrage suddenly went flat. For a moment, there was only a profound, echoing silence. The war was over. Empires had dissolved. The Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, the Russian, and the German empires were all gone, their lands carved up to create new countries. The map of Europe was redrawn, but the peace that followed was fragile. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to end the war, to end all wars, imposed such harsh terms on Germany that it created deep resentment and economic despair. It didn't heal the wounds of the world. It salted them. The echo of that single gunshot in Sarajevo did end in 1918. It would reverberate through the decades, creating the very conditions that just 20 years later would plunge the world into an even greater, more destructive conflict, World War II. History is a complex cluster of stories, each one connected to the next. To understand how our world was shaped, you have to understand them all. Subscribe to Clusterstory for more.